On today's show, this team has lost its identity, its structure, and its margin for error. And until that changes, no amount of line juggling or hope is going to fix what's broken.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan HOLMI. I've covered the Capitals for the past 4 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. In today's episode of Locked On Capitals, we talk about Hendrix Lapierre is running out of runway, even if the numbers love him. Listen, he is an interesting player for the Capitals in the lineup, even when he's not finding the back of the net. What's behind that? A bit later in the show, we'll talk about there is no quick fix, and pretending there is makes it worse as far as the Capitals winning games on a consistent basis. But just to get it going here, talking about the excitement that Pierre-Luc Dubois is trending in the right direction. As Bailey Johnson posted earlier on Twitter, she said that Pierre-Luc Dubois was out on the ice in a non-contact jersey and what that means for the Capitals as they have been kind of reeling in his absence. And I don't want to put it all squarely on his shoulders, but having PLD out of the lineup for this long was never a part of the master plan to start this season. But talking about his impact, let's just start here because this is the truth, whether people want to hear it or not. Everything with the Capitals is off right now. And to be clear here, I am recording this before the Vancouver game, just based on work schedule and that kind of thing. But all things considered, the team is off right now, and they need to fix a lot of things. I think PLD, when he returns, if healthy, depending on what kind of condition that he's in, that could make a big difference. And I don't mean they're unlucky off. I mean structurally off, rhythm off, identity off. And in a previous episode, I talked about Panarin. I talked about Shen. I talked about trade possibilities for the Capitals. You know, bringing in a goal scorer will help for sure. But if you're still broken structurally, that is only going to go so far because injuries are a part of it. You know, Tom Wilson just returning, body still missing. We saw sort of miss some time. Chikrin, Leonard, that those definitely impacted where the Capitals are at. But PLD, I'm going to circle as the one of the greatest impact. One for time, the amount of time that he's missed and what he means to this team. But the real turning point of the season is the absence of PLD, for sure. This team has not been the same since he went down, as evident. Not because Dubois was lighting up the score sheet, because he wasn't, but because he was the glue, the stabilizer, the adult in the room down the middle. They were that much stronger with him in the mix. And here's what people keep missing when they talk about PLD, because a lot of people want to think right away about his horrible season playing with the Kings. Dubois wasn't brought in to be flashy. He wasn't. It was at the end of the day to see if he could turn his career around. He was brought in to hold the line. He was the center that allowed Spencer Carbery to roll matchups without flinching, that you trusted Pierre-Luc Dubois when he was in the mix. And to the people that forgot what he means to this team and what he was tasked with, he took hard defensive assignments all the time. That's why they loved him in there. He absorbed top 6 minutes. He tilted the ice without needing points. And he allowed other guys to breathe offensively. A big rig out there. Maybe took a bit too many penalty minutes, but at the end of the day, the Caps are that much better with him in there, and that means a lot. And when you talk about pillars of the top six, he is definitely that. He is the guy that stirred the drink at that second line and at the center position, big picture. Because Dubois, the Dubois line didn't just survive against other teams' best. It controlled them. Think of last year's Capitals and why they played so well. Yeah, PLD had a lot to do with that. Puck possession leaned the Capitals' way. Shot attempts leaned the Capitals' way. Expected goals leaned the Capitals' way. And the Caps themselves, they haven't had that since early December, which is, by the way, the last time they won back-to-back games. Surprise, surprise to no one. So to talk about the impact of one player on the Capitals, generally, I think that you would think to yourself, Alex Ovechkin, right? Tom Wilson, something like that. But make no mistake about it, the absence of Pierre-Luc Dubois, you can draw a lot of lines to why the Capitals are struggling. And talking about that, PLD leaving the lineup, the Capitals not winning back-to-back games since December, that's not coincidence. That is cause and effect. Because what have we seen with the Capitals with PLD out of the lineup? The lines are shuffled nightly, as evident in the game against Vancouver. Wow, just crazy. Matchups feel reactive, not proactive. No line is dependable from game to game. Every mistake feels catastrophic. And that's why even strong goaltender nights from Logan Thompson or Charlie Lindgren don't steal games anymore. There is no margin for error. And ultimately, that is the hard part that the Capitals are having to deal with right now. How do they find a way to overcome? How do they find a way to rid themselves of these bad habits? Because there are no quick fixes. And, you can point to the Capitals going out and acquiring a guy like Panarin, that there was also talk of Rasmus Anderson. But until they fix what's wrong with this team in the goal scoring department, that is a big thing. They are going to continue to struggle. And what you're seeing from the Capitals right now is a team that doesn't trust its structure because it doesn't have one. And, to give Spencer Carbery his flowers here, I think it's easy to point to him as what is wrong with this team. But when you take a look at what he's done everything he can possibly do to make this team better. And you take a look at guys that have filled in, Justin Sordoff, right? A guy that started the season on the fourth line. I don't think anyone had him circled as a guy that was going to change the second line center position and fill in for PLD. He's done the job, honestly. A lot of respect to the kid for what he has done, but asking him to replace PLD in the role that he takes on is crazy. Again, it's encouraging. What it offers is the Capitals some flexibility. But make no mistake about it, it is not plug and play. And it's not fair. And it's also not realistic. Because this team right now is floating, not sinking yet, but definitely not swimming upstream either. That, and the thing of it is, that's the hard part is we saw this coming from miles away that this team was struggling. They did next to nothing. Last trade deadline, they traded for and acquired Anthony Beauvillier. This summer, all they did is that they acquired Sordoff, traded for Sordoff and Declan Chisholm, that they swung and missed on Nikolai Ehlers, that they swung and missed on Quinn Hughes, that in a lot of ways they are in the position that they're in because there is a fear of parting with prospects, these kind of things. And part of that is it just accepting your fate, that we are where we are because we did nothing. And if you're asking me, until Dubois or someone fills that void in a meaningful way, this is what the Capitals are, a team surviving shifts, not dictating games. So a lot for the Capitals that they need to turn around. Again, I think that structurally, that is something that needs to be addressed, of course, but even beyond that, they also need a boost in the goal scoring department, and that includes the addition of PLD and Tom Wilson back to the lineup. All right, so coming up here after the break, Hendrix Lapierre is running out of runway, even if the numbers love him. Straight ahead. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game during NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. Now listen, our regional teams, they're not in the playoffs, but with FanDuel, you still have vested interest. Open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money down. All of a sudden, those games got that much more exciting, because with FanDuel, you make your picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel.com, an official sports book partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan HOLMI. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in segment 2 here, we're talking about Hendrix Lapierre and kind of a curious situation that you see that he is not getting the production that you think that he should get. A guy that is in the lineup on a night in and night out basis, has not scored a goal in a long time. The fear, of course, is that he is a former first-round pick, and where it gets complicated is that in order for him to go down to Hershey, if the Capitals wanted to do it, he would have to clear waivers. So my estimation is that he will end up getting bundled in a trade, sent out at the trade deadline, if not before. But if he does, if he wants to turn his career around with the Capitals, what does he have to do? Let's dive into that here in the second segment of today's show, because let's talk about the most uncomfortable conversation in the whole organization right now. Hendrix Lapierre. And this is where analytics and reality are officially at odds, that they don't always add up. Because let's say it obviously, let's say it out loud. Lapierre has not scored an NHL goal in over a season's worth of games. And yet, he is in the lineup on a night in and night out basis. That's not a slump anymore. That's a defining stretch of a career. And here's where it gets tricky. The Capitals control play when he's on the ice. Shot share is strong. High danger chances lean in the Capitals' direction, but results are not there at all. And, if you take a look at him last season, he was supposed to be the answer at the third line center position then as well. Didn't play well. Went down to Hershey, absolutely killed it. The feeling was that his game is good now, right? That everything is all good to go. Goes into camp this season and absolutely kills it. He said he came into camp with an I don't give a bleep attitude, and you felt it, like he was a changed man. But then, that all dried up once the regular season started, that the underlying numbers are good, generating shot chances, expected goals are strong. But the things that matter the most, goals scored, well, it is not there. And GM Chris Patrick has been pretty clear here. The organization likes what they see from him in terms of effort and detail. They're more comfortable with him on the ice than they were last year. That's kind of an interesting statement to make, isn't it? Considering that he has gone a really long time without scoring a goal. But comfort doesn't earn you minutes in the NHL. Production does. And that's the wall that Lapierre keeps crashing into, is production. And he has mentioned it as much, that he's overthinking things, that the longer and longer this goes without scoring a goal, the more difficult it gets. He's averaging under 9 minutes a night. That's not development ice time. That's a don't hurt us ice time. And the message from the front office and the coaching staff is basically this: trust is earned incrementally. You start small, You prove reliability, then you force the coach's hand. And if you want a prime example of that, Ethan Frank, who never had grand plans of doing anything, maybe he had grand plans. I don't think the Capitals had grand plans, has made the most of his opportunity and subsequently why he's in the lineup. He's not overthinking it, and he's scoring goals. That is something that has eluded Hendrix Lapierre this year. So as far as Lapierre is concerned, he looks like a player thinking instead of reacting. And you can hear it when he talks. He admits he's gripping the stick. He's worried about making mistakes instead of attacking. And that, at the end of the day, is the death of a skill player. The NHL doesn't reward hesitation. It punishes it. Because here's the hard truth, Caps fans. Underlying numbers don't matter if coaches don't feel your impact. I think they would like to take him out of the lineup, but you're going to take him out and put who in? Sonny Milano? Is that any better? And that's ultimately why he's here in a nutshell. He's here because they're afraid that if they, put him on waivers, he's going to get scooped up. And that fear is founded. It's real. You'd hate to see him go on a different team. The Capitals get nothing and absolutely torch it. But the Capitals need to make a move, bundle them in a deal together and make this team much better. Because right now, Lapierre's impact is theoretical. With his ice time dropping even further in January, this isn't trending in the right direction. This is a player slipping down the depth chart at the exact moment opportunity should be knocking, but it isn't. So a lot of this is in his hands. Can he turn it around, right? And a lot of those head games, you saw Mantha struggle. You saw Ovechkin struggle. That until your confidence is restored, I think that you can keep going down those same pathways again, and again. It's ultimately up to him, and you take a look at the lineups, who's in and who's out of the lineup at some point. You got to think to yourself, would they be better off with an Ilya Protas in the lineup over a Lapierre? Would they be better with a Crystal, Miroshnichenko, these kind of guys that at the end of the day, those underlying numbers are good. That shows that you're not a complete waste of talent. But at the end of the day, what you need is production. And that production needs to come in the form of finding the back of the net. Without that, you're a single-dimensional player. You are that theoretical player that I could be good. If I didn't overthink it, if I didn't grip the stick too much, I would be a good player. But he's not he's not that right now. And what the Capitals need at the end of the day is that guy that can score a goal on a regular basis. Lord knows they don't have enough of those. You don't need a lot more Lapierres in the mix that are not scoring goals. So at the end of the day, the future, like I said, is in his hands. Can he overcome this slump, this season plus slump that he's in where hasn't scored a goal? I guess I need to see it before I believe it. All right, so coming up here after the break, there is no quick fix for this roster, and pretending there is makes it worse. Straight ahead. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't done so already, go to lockedoncapitals.supercast.com. You get access to an ad-free version of Locked On Capitals compatible with Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. An invite to the members-only Locked On Everyday Club Discord, which also includes a group chat just for listeners of Locked On Capitals. We can talk about what the Capitals need to do, trades, how this team needs to produce, all of that and much more. Go to lockedoncapitals.supercast.com. There is also a link in the show notes. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and like the videos down below. All right, in the final segment of today's show, we're talking about how to fix this roster that is broken. And I think at the end of the day, it's an easy thing to say that this team is not firing on all cylinders. Is the team better with Wilson in? Yes. Are they better in with Sordiff? Yes. But big picture, there are still holes on this roster, still improvements that need to be made. So let's dive into that here in the final segment here. So what is the fix at the end of the day? Because that is the question everyone is screaming into the air right now. And I hate to say it, there isn't one. There's no magic trade. Like I've talked about, there's the Panarin thing. There is, the Shen, the different names that have been floated out there, the Quinn Hughes, some that just will never come true, and no winger that suddenly fixes structure, chemistry, and confidence all at once. Chris Patrick saying that they're looking for a high-end winger, that's fine. That's necessary, but it's not enough. And if you are an everydayer of the show, I've talked about that. I feel like they're 2 forwards and a defender away from being competitive. I would say ideally a center and a winger and a defender, because one move doesn't repair a cracked foundation. The real fixes are uncomfortable, getting healthy, especially Dubois, right? That he is trending in the right direction. We see him at practice, that he could be back after the Olympic break, resetting internal accountability, and possibly letting Hershey options actually play, right? That Miroshnichenko, Ilya Protas, everyone else down in Hershey that's banging on the door saying, give me my opportunity and I'll show you I'm better than a Lapierre. I'm better than a Milano. Those kind of guys. And more practice time, not less. It doesn't help, like I say, that their plane had issues and they weren't able to practice in Vancouver. And there's all these different things. I think the Capitals, not practicing enough, obviously is not going to fix what ails this team. More practice is needed and honest conversations in that room. The team needs clarity, roles, and identity, because right now everything feels temporary. Lines, ice time, trust. You take a look at the line combos on any given night, they're put in the blender and you never know what to expect. And in the NHL, uncertainty kills confidence faster than losses. The Capitals are still right there in the standings, if you can believe it, despite the free-falling nature of everything. 1 point, as I record this, out of the third place in the Metro. But don't let that fool you. That is going to evaporate in a hurry. That separation that I've talked about on this show is going to evaporate in a hurry. They're closer to slipping than surging. Again, does Wilson give them a boost? For sure. When PLD comes back, does that give them a boost? For sure. But it's still not enough. Something's got to give. And at the end of the day, I think it is Chris Patrick going out and making that trade. Because ultimately, the longer this drags on, the harder it becomes to flip that switch. You can't wait until the trade deadline. There will be no separation. Even when Dubois does return, it's just going to be too late. They're not going to be able to get back into it. And like I say, if the Caps wait too long to address the situation, they're going to be looking for answers about what we're going to do next year, not this year. Then the season won't be a turnaround story, right? I think that at the end of the day, that's what we're hoping for, the Disney story, that they struggled, and then Wilson came back and PLD came back and they made it to the playoffs and blah, blah. I don't think that's reality. I think that if they continue down the path they're on right now, it's going to end in regret. Why did we squander what could be Alex Ovechkin's last season in the NHL? Why didn't we do more in the summer? Those are going to be the hard questions aimed right at Chris Patrick, that we know that the elephant in the room is that we need to make changes, but they haven't done anything. And, you take a look at the schedule right now, this westerly trip that they're on right now. This is prime pickings, if you will, to turn things around, that they got off to a rough start, against Colorado. That was one that I had circled for losing. I think that honestly, as most Capitals fans, you thought they were going to lose that game as well. And as it turns out, they did that. Glimpses of greatness in that game. Then we have Vancouver. And then we have games against the Flames. We have games against the Kraken and Edmonton in there. And there's varying levels of how much this team is going to be tested. The Avalanche, for sure, really put this team through its paces. The team that has the most points in all of the NHL, well, that was really hard for the Capitals. Who's surprised about that? But you take a look at Vancouver, you take a look at the Flames, games that they most assuredly should win. Edmonton is going to be difficult. Connor McDavid and all the firepower that is on that team. But you can't say that, I'm playing against a really team and that's why we lost. We would have won that game had we not been playing the Avalanche or the Oilers, because the thing of it is, at the end of the day, that's what you've got to do to beat the really great teams. Because at the end of the day, you make it to the playoffs. You're going to be playing really great teams. And you take a look at last season, for example, the Capitals did pretty well in the first round, but everything came crashing down around them in the second round. That the signs, the signals were there last year that it wasn't enough as they got fanned out in the second round. So for Chris Patrick to do nothing in the offseason other than bring in Sordoff and Chisholm, well, then a lot of the onus of this failure goes on him, because we know that there were problems last year and he did nothing about it. And, you look on paper, I think that he thought the Capitals were going to take steps forward, that Spencer Carbery, the Jack Adams winner last year, he's going to turn this team around. Well, you always got to get planned for the unplanned. And they didn't plan for PLD to be missing all this time, for Tom Wilson to go down, not to mention any other injuries that are going to happen between now and the end of the season. As they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That is personified and exemplified in this situation, that Chris Patrick did not plan for the failure that is manifesting itself in injured players and not stockpiling this roster to be competitive, because that is the position that the Capitals are in right now. They are on the outside looking in. And that is the bitter pill for me as a Capitals fan, is that if this is, a matter of fact, the last season of Alex Ovechkin, that this team went out in a whimper instead of a victory parade. That's not how I would like Ovi to go out. And I think you as Capitals fans as well would at least try to make a bigger push, that Chris Patrick go out and do something, get a big name player, try to do something to get this team turned around. Because like I say, it's early enough that you can turn it around. But if you wait until the trade deadline, it is going to be too late. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are, as a matter of fact, what makes this show successful. Are you one of those that listen or watch this show each and every day? First of all, thank you very much for doing that. I sure do appreciate it. But I got something just for you. It is on Supercast, locked on capitals.supercast.com. You get access to an ad-free version of this show, available on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts, and an invite to the members-only Everyday Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for Locked On Capitals. There's so much to like. I look forward to seeing you on lockedoncapitals.supercast.com. There's also a link in the show notes. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holmi, and I'll talk to you again next time.